Welcome dear students to St. Peter's College, Colombo 4, Negombo branch, grade 12 physics. Today I am going to do unit 4, thermal physics, competency level 4.5, 4.6 and 4.7. 4.5 is heat exchange. Heat capacity or thermal capacity is the physical property of matter defined as the amount of heat needed to raise the temperature of unit in 1 unit of a given mass. Heat capacity or thermal capacity is a physical property of matter defined as the amount of heat to be supplied to a given mass of material to produce a unit change in its temperature. Okay, unit change. Therefore, if C is the thermal capacity, E is the heat energy, delta T is the temperature change. When you divide it by delta T, you will get the unit temperature. Now, you can give an equation like this: E equals C delta T, where C is the heat capacity or thermal capacity. Units: Celsius, joule per Celsius or joules per Kelvin. Unit temperature difference, right? Now, specific heat capacity. That is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of a substance per unit mass from unit temperature, right? Unit mass by unit temperature. 1 Kelvin or 1 degree Celsius. Specific heat capacity is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of a substance per unit mass. Earlier I said given mass. Here this is unit mass by 1 Kelvin or 1 degree Celsius. The specific heat capacity of a material is a physical property. Now see, the specific heat capacity C is equal to E divided by M delta theta. Given the equation earlier one, E equals C equals E divided by delta theta only. Now here you have mass also. If you write it in this way, E equals M into C delta theta. Right? E is the energy, heat energy. C is the specific heat capacity. Units are joules, C minus 1, kg minus 1. Or you can say joules, K minus 1, kg minus 1. Theta is the change in temperature. Okay? Now, molar heat capacity. The same thing, but this is to raise 1 mole of amount of 1 mole, right? Molar heat capacity is the amount of heat needed to raise the temperature of 1 mole of a substance by 1 Kelvin or 1 degree Celsius. Unit temperature, right? The SI units, joule, mole per Kelvin, right? Then, see this specific heat capacity, you can write, this is E, right? Heat energy. You can denote it as Q also. E or Q equals MC delta theta. That is specific heat capacity. The molar heat capacity you are writing like this: NC delta theta. Right? Now, calorimeter. We are using this instrument to do our practicals in our laboratory. You can see this calorimeter. We use this. The calorimeter is an object used for calorimetric or process of measuring the heat of thermal reactions or physical changes as well as heat capacity. When we are doing the mixture method, especially the mixture method, the practicals, we need this instrument because this is, the lid is ebonite and this outer surface is insulated, and because this is specially designed to avoid the heat losses to the surrounding. Now this vessel is insulated so that the conduction cannot happen. Here this is with the ebonite lid so that the convection also avoided. Right? Now, the principle of calorimetry, that is mixture method. When you keep two objects together with different temperatures, always the heat flow from higher point to the lower point. From the higher point, the heat flows to the lower object, and finally they will come to a common temperature, and we call that the bodies are in thermal equilibrium. And according to the conservation of energy, you can say the heat given by the first object, the hotter object, is equal to the heat obtained by the other object, right? When two bodies in any phase at different temperatures are mixed, heat flow from the body at higher temperature to the body at lower temperature until both of them attain a common temperature. If there is no heat loss to the surroundings, we always imagine, using a calorimeter, we imagine that there is no heat loss. But actually there is a small heat loss. We have to do that correction also when we are doing the practicals. If there is a heat loss, no heat loss to the surroundings, then from the law of conservation of energy, you can write heat loss by one body is equal to heat gained by the other body. Now heat is equal to mc theta. M is the mass, C is the specific heat capacity, theta is the temperature difference. So you are writing the equation here, M1, C1, theta difference, right? Temperature difference. Here you are writing for the other object, M2, C2 and temperature difference. So that from this equation we can do lots of calculations. Now I said, even though we use the calorimeter or any other protective method, always there is a heat loss to the surroundings. So that we have to do a cooling corrections, right? Because to get the accurate values for our practicals. Now heat losses to the surroundings cannot be avoided. However, it can be minimized by taking suitable precautions. In the method of mixtures, always when we are doing the mixture practicals, mixture method, the initial temperature of the calorimeter and the contents is brought down to 4 or 5 degrees below the room temperature, and finally your final measurement you take as 4 or 5 degrees above the room temperature. That means we will consider this as like this here, below the 5 or 4 degrees below the room temperature, here 5 or 4 degrees above the temperature, and these two will cancel. This is a heat gain. Now when the atmosphere, the surrounding is less than room temperature, it will gain temperature, right? If the container is more than the room temperature, it will give out temperature to the atmosphere. This 5 and 5 will cancel, and we say that is the cooling correction of our practicals. Now see this example. Here we are using the energy conservation law. Heat given by the first object is equal to the heat obtained by the other object. A piece of metal of mass 0.122 kg is heated to 100 degrees Celsius and dropped into a calorimeter of mass 0.04 kg containing water of mass 0.2 kg at a temperature of 16 degrees. The final temperature of the mixture is 24.1 degrees Celsius. Calculate the specific heat capacity of the metal specific heat capacity of copper is 390 joules kg minus 1 k minus 1, and C of the water is 4200 J G minus 1 K minus 1. Now we are using this theory. Heat lost by the metal equals heat gained by the calorimeter and the contents. Now you know the mass M. This is the temperature difference, right? Here you have the temperature difference, and this is for the heat lost by the metal, right? Now heat gained by the calorimeter and the contents. Here the calorimeter and here the water, right? So now you can find the unknown, this thing, C, right? Simplifying this, you will obtain this. Okay. The temperature difference always, the highest temperature is here, you have the piece of into the calorimeter. Here the initial is 16, the final is 24.1, and here the still temperature is 100 degrees, right? So you have to get this difference. The final will be the heat given is the initial temperature minus the final of the container, and here the initial temperature of the calorimeter plus water and the final temperature it reaches, right? So second problem, a piece of copper of mass 0.2 kg heated to 100 degrees is dropped into a copper calorimeter containing water of mass 0.4 kg and temperature 10 degrees. The calorimeter is well protected from heat losses. Find the final temperature of the mixture. Now this the specific heat capacities of copper and water are given 400 and 4200 J kg minus 1 K minus 1. Let theta be the final temperature. Okay. Now heat lost by copper equals heat gained by the calorimeter and the container. Same thing, right? Same problem. Now, but we are here finding the final temperature. Here we found the specific heat capacity of the metal. Now see, heat lost by copper. Now it is 100 degrees initially, and the final temperature is theta. The temperature difference is 100 minus theta. Specific heat capacity is 400, mass is 0.2. Heat gained by the calorimeter and water. Calorimeter, the specific heat capacity is 400, water 4200. Final temperature theta, initially the water and the calorimeter was at 10, theta minus 10, theta minus 10. Then here the mass of the calorimeter, mass of water. So you will be able to find theta. Now, this equation, this problem, you all can do because it's a little blurred and I cannot read it. Here, see the second one, the lead bullet. Here, this also a little difficult to read. Better you go through these examples as I have given the solution also here. In case of this, it says the half of the kinetic energy is absorbed by a metal bullet, right? Now, half of the kinetic energy means half mv square divided by half equals mc theta. So that you can do the problem. Here it says, second problem, you keep this one, I'll do it later, right? Because there is a phase change, ml comes. Okay. See this last one. Water falls to a height of 250 meters, assuming that the value of the energy due to fall is converted into heat. Calculate the rise of temperature of water, and it is given that the C is 400. What is it? Water. Energy is 418 joules, right? So now mc theta equals mgh because it's falling potential energy. No kinetic energy when it falls. Only the potential energy comes. Here only the kinetic energy comes. Here only the potential energy, right? Now mgh equals mc theta. Again, you apply the values and you will get the temperature change. See, now we have to do a practical to find the specific heat capacity of a solid, right? Now, we are using the mixture method, right? Determination of specific heat capacity of a solid substance by method of mixtures. Here we need a calorimeter, a boiling tube, a quantity of lead shots. We are going to find the specific heat capacity of lead shots, right? 0 to 100 degrees centimeter thermometer, a water heater tripod, a wire gauze, a 3 beam balance, sufficient water, stirrer, and a 0 to 50 degrees thermometer, right? Now, here we are heating the lead shots about up to 100, and we are putting all the lead shots into the calorimeter, which is containing amount of water, and we take the theory as the heat given by the lead shots are equal to the heat absorbed by the calorimeter plus water, right? So we need to measure the mass of the calorimeter with the stirrer, mass of water, mass of the lead shots, and the initial temperature of the lead shots, and the initial temperature of calorimeter plus water and the final temperature it beats. So, according to the theory, heat loss by lead shots equals heat gain by water plus heat gain by calorimeter. Method. So you set up the apparatus like this, right? Set up the apparatus like this. This is a Nicholson heater. You have to heat the lead shots by means of steam, not in the water bath. So you keep a instrument like this, right? So you can move this upwards, then this block will open and the metal balls will just directly come into the calorimeter. This is the calorimeter. It is containing insulated outing also to avoid conduction. Here also it is kept on a wooden piece of stage to avoid conduction. And you have a stirrer and a thermometer. Here also you have a thermometer. Now you are giving heat, and when the water boils, the steam comes and eat the lead shots. And when the temperature is steady in this thermometer, there is a temperature thermometer also. When the thermometer says the steady reading, you open this and all these lead balls will come into the calorimeter where it contains water. You have to fill water up to the top 1 centimeter down the top level. That is the water level you have to fill here. So now you have to measure the initial temperature of this water and the calorimeter before you insert these lead shots. And finally, when the lead shots come in, you have to continuously stir this and measure the final temperature of the container. And then you have to measure the calorimeter, lead shots and liquid, the whole thing from a triple beam balance. Before starting, you are measuring the stirrer and the calorimeter with the triple beam balance. After pouring water also you are measuring it again. Then finally, after putting lead shots also you are measuring the mass of the calorimeter plus the contents. Now, according to the theory, you know everything except this the specific heat capacity of lead shots. So you can calculate it using this theory, right? Now, conclusion. Conclude the value obtained from the calculations as the specific heat capacity of lead shots. But we didn't do a cooling correction. Now there can be heat losses. So to do this, we have to do that cooling correction what I have told you earlier. That is, you have to keep this container with the calorimeter with the containers below the room temperature 5 degrees, and then after you put in the lead shots, allow it to rise above the temperature 5 degrees. Then that will do the cooling corrections. So to do that, you have to know the amount of lead shots that you should have. You have to put to the calorimeter in order to get a 10 degrees temperature rise. Therefore, you have to do a trial before you do this practical, and you have to decide the amount of lead shots that you are inserting here. Right? See, now refer the standard data book and obtain the standard value of the specific heat capacity of the lead shots and calculate the percentage error of the value you obtain from the experiment. Right? And finally, there is a note. This note, you have to follow this very carefully. You will use this for all the other mixture method practicals, right? Take the calorimeter with its external covering to the place where the lead shots are being heated. If not, place a heat insulated obstacle between the water and the calorimeter. Now look here. Here, this is the obstacle because this Bunsen burner will affect the calorimeter's temperature. So avoid that. You have to keep an insulator like this, like a barrel. And when the lead shots are being transferred to the calorimeter, care should be taken to prevent splashing out water. Now, here you should be very careful, because if you splash some water, the mass of the calorimeter plus water will be disturbed, right? Care should be taken to prevent splashing out of the water in it, and to observe the thermometer reading very carefully. Since lead is a good conductor, the mixture reacts the maximum temperature very soon. This method can be used to determine the specific heat capacity of a liquid by using the liquid in place of the water and substance of known specific capacity of the solid substance. Now, this same method now we are using to find the specific heat capacity of a solid here. Now, we can use the same practical to find the specific heat capacity of a liquid. If you know the specific heat capacity of the lead shots, and if you put the liquid that you want to find the specific heat capacity, the same theory you use, and you will calculate the specific heat capacity of this liquid. A pilot experiment should be done to decide the amount of lead shots to be used to mix in order that the temperature of the mixture would rise by about 10 degrees Celsius. Right? Method of compensation can be used, that is the cooling correction, right? The method of compensation can be used as a remedy for the loss of heat. The initial temperature of the calorimeter with water is first cooled by 5 degrees before mixing the heat substance. The heated substance is then added to the water and mixed well, so that the temperature of the mixture rises by 5 degrees above the initial temperature. The heat gained by the mixture during the 5 degrees Celsius below the initial temperature is expected to compensate with the heat lost by the mixture during the 5 degrees Celsius above the initial temperature. In the above process, care should be taken to have the initial temperature of water a few degrees above the dew point. Right. Now, you better go through these notes carefully. Now see, this is the example. I have taken this from your past paper book, A-Level 2007. Right? Look here. Now, you are asked to design and perform an experiment in the school laboratory to determine the specific heat capacity of a metal using the method of mixtures. Water, thermally insulated calorimeter with a stirrer, a thermometer and a small metal balls heated to 100 degrees are provided. Right? So the same thing, right? Now they have given you as a structured essay question. Simply, what is the other instrument that you need in this experiment? Here, you need a triple beam balance to measure all this. So, you have to write, it's the triple beam balance. What is the advantage of using a thermally insulated calorimeter? That is, avoiding the heat losses. Right? So, to minimize the heat losses to the surrounding. List the measurements you will obtain in this experiment in order that you perform the experiment. To perform this experiment, you need to know the amount of the mass of the lead shots, initial temperature of the lead shots, calorimeter with the stirrer, mass of the calorimeter with the stirrer, and the amount of water, the mass of water in the calorimeter, and the initial temperature of water plus the calorimeter, and the final temperature of the content after putting the lead shots into the calorimeter. The amount of water used in the calorimeter should not be too small or too large. Give reasons as why it should not be too small. If it is too small, right, you will not immerse all the lead shots with water, and this temperature will not equally distributed in the water bath. Give a reason as to why it should not be too large. If it is too large, this up to the top level of the calorimeter, when you are putting the lead shot, the water will splash and your mass of the water will be incorrect, right? So, suppose the following values were calculated from your experimental results. Heat gained by the calorimeter, stirrer and water 2400 joules. Right? Mass of metal balls 0.3 kg. Decrease in temperature of the metal balls 64 degrees Celsius. Right? So, calculate the specific heat capacity of the metal. So, the total the amount the heat given by the metal balls is 2400 joules. Right? It is equal to the heat gained by the calorimeter and the stirrer and the water is 2400. So no need to write MC theta for the water and for the calorimeter. You can just write 2400. Here the heat given by the metal balls is the mass is M 0.3. C is you have to find, that is the specific heat capacity into 64 final temperature, right? Now from that you can find the specific heat capacity. Why is it not suitable to heat the metal balls in a water bath at 100 degrees in order to obtain the metal balls heated at 100 degrees required for this experiment? So we used a Nicholson heater and we heated the lead shots by means of steam, because if you put it in the water bath and when you are transferring the metal balls to the calorimeter, water also will come with the surface from the metal balls. But here directly the metal balls are coming to the calorimeter without any water droplets. Now see the last one. Instead of small metal balls, is it possible to use metal powder in this experiment? Yes or no? No, because give reasons. Because metal powder will float on the calorimeter, on the water. So it will not distribute their heat equally among the water bath, right? And also sometimes the heat loss is more because the surface area is very small and they will give out the heat to the surroundings, right? Okay, now see this. Newton's law of cooling. Newton said if there is a body, hot body, you kept in a forced convection near a window or near a fan, that the heat cooling rate, the heat loss of heat, the rate of losing heat is equal to the excess temperature. Excess temperature is the surroundings temperature, the difference between the surrounding and the object, right? So this is Newton's cooling law. When a body is cooling under forced convection, rate of loss of heat is directly proportional to the excess temperature over that of the surroundings. Now dQ, Q is the amount of heat energy. dQ over dt is that is the rate of heat loss, is proportional to the excess temperature. That is the temperature of the body and the difference between the temperature of the body and the surroundings. If this is the surrounding temperature and this is the body's temperature, this is the difference between that two. So to avoid this proportionality, right, they introduced a constant. dQ over dt equals Ka Q minus Qs, right? Where Q and Qs are the temperatures corresponding to the object and the surroundings. Or you can say the Newton's law like this: for small temperatures, right? For small temperatures, difference between the body and its surrounding, the rate of cooling of the body is directly proportional to the temperature difference and the surface area exposed. That is no need under forced convection part, right? So look here. Now consider an object of mass simple m, specific heat capacity C, will exchange an amount of heat within delta T time, and as a result of it, the temperature change is delta theta. So from the okay, now the rate of heat exchange, that is delta Q divided by delta T, units J/S minus 1. The rate of temperature change is delta theta divided by delta T, that is C/S minus 1 or K/S minus 1. Now, we know the equation delta Q equals MC delta theta, right? Q equals MC theta, okay? So, if you divide this by delta T, you will get delta Q divided by delta T equals MC delta theta divided by delta T. So, equation A. Then, from the Newton's cooling law, you know delta Q over delta T equals Ka theta minus theta R, where theta R is the temperature of the room temperature, right? Surroundings. From A and B, you can write delta Q equals MC delta theta over delta T equals Ka theta minus theta R. That is delta theta over delta T equals Ka divided by MC theta minus theta R. So, Ka and MC are constants. So, if you are taking it out, you can write delta theta divided by delta theta. T is proportional to theta minus theta R. Again, this is we can conclude that the change in temperature is proportional to the excess temperature. Earlier we said the rate of heat loss is proportional to the excess temperature. Now we are saying the change in temperature is proportional to the excess temperature. Okay. Now, this is another practical to determine the specific heat capacity of a liquid by a method of cooling, right? A method of cooling. This is the Newton's law, right? So, you have to have this instruments, apparatus, and you need to hang this calorimeter, right? Calorimeter here with a lid, right? And you have to have a force convection. Even you have to keep it near a window, or you have to place a fan here, right? Now you are putting some water. That means water 2/3 of the calorimeter. You are putting water 2/3 of the calorimeter, and close the lid. You heat it up to 70 degrees Celsius. Okay, 70 degrees Celsius, and you keep it near a fan like this, and you have to take the temperatures every half a minute, 30 seconds, right? Every half a minute until it reaches around 40 degrees Celsius, right? 70 to 40, it is cooling under forced convection. Now you are taking the temperature, the time taken. You are taking the temperatures every 30 seconds, right? And here now you record these temperatures, and then you have to replace this water. Here it is initially water. You replace this water, and instead of that, same amount of 2/3 of the calorimeter, you wipe the calorimeter properly, and you put the liquid that you want to find the specific capacity into the calorimeter, right? Now you have 2/3 of that liquid in the same calorimeter, same fan or same window. So again do the practical, same procedure. Heat it up to 70 and let it cool up to 40, and you take the temperatures in every 30 seconds. Now you have two sets of readings. So you draw a graph against the temperature and time, right? Now you will get a curve like this, right? So the liquid will be down and water is there. So you have two curves, and temperature differences are here. From 70 to 40 it is decreasing. So you take two temperatures, draw a line parallel to the x-axis, another temperature, draw a line parallel to the x-axis, and take the time taken here. Take the time taken. Now that is the difference theta minus theta r. Theta minus theta r. Now using this cooling equation, right? MC theta minus theta r. MC theta minus theta r. And divide by the time T1, T2. Why we should equal these two? For water and for the liquid. We can equate these two because we use the same calorimeter, same amount of liquid, so that the rate of cooling rate is equal. Therefore, we can equate these two and we can find the unknown specific heat capacity from this method, right? Here, go through the methods and the conclusion and also the note clearly. Here, there is a special note. Now, you can do this method also to calculate the specific heat capacity of the unknown liquid. You do the same practical, do the same graph, and you can find the two gradients at that point, d theta over dt, theta 1, d theta over d theta 2. Then apply that instead of theta minus theta r, divide by t, divide by t1, divide by t2. Applying that, you will be able to get the specific heat capacity of the unknown liquid. Now, this is also A-level 2007. Here, I am not going to do this. This is the cooling practical, the cooling law to find the specific heat capacity of unknown liquid. So, you do this. You can do and try this problem, right? Now, heat capacities of gases. In the expansion of gases with temperature, the condition on which expansion occur must be specified, right? That is, the expansion can take place under either constant volume or constant pressure. Unlike in solids and liquids, gases have two reasons: constant volume and constant pressure. The molar heat capacity of gas at constant pressure, we denote it as Cp. Cp is the heat required to produce unit rise of temperature when pressure remains constant, right? When a gas is heated at constant pressure, a part of the heat is used in doing external work, and in the case of real gas, part is used in increasing potential energy, right? Now, the molar heat capacity of a gas at constant volume, Cv. Cv is the heat required to produce unit temperature rise in a mole of the gas when the volume remains constant. Okay? When the gas is heated at constant volume, all the heat supplied is used in raising the temperature. Therefore, Cp always greater than Cv, because here the heat supplied is used in raising the temperature only, right? There, this Cp it used to raise the potential energy also. Now, change of state, right? Matter can exist in three stages or three phases. That is solid, liquid and gases. All matter are made of small particles called molecules. They are always in a state of motion. When they are close, their attraction is great. They possess kinetic energy due to their motion and potential energy due to their separation of being attracted. Right? Molecular expansion of solid, liquid and gases. As you know, we learned in our earlier units, solid, liquid and gas. Solids are having very strong bonds and they are close together and they are having a crystalline structure, and they can only vibrate in their mean positions. In the case of liquid, they can move here and there. They can move about in the body of the liquid. It has defined, it is having a definite volume and but not a definite shape. In the case of gas, the molecules of gas move with great speed at random. They collide with each other and collide with the walls of the container. This causes pressure on the walls of the container. It has no definite shape or volume. Change of phase. Now solids turn into liquids. Liquids turn into gases. This is what we call change of phase. When the phase change occurs, the temperature won't change but heat absorbs. So we call it latent heat, right? depending on temperature and pressure, all matter can exist in above mentioned three phases. Heat is required to change the substance from the solid to liquid. From liquid to vapor phase is vaporization. Directly from solid to vapor, sublimation. Right? The heat absorbed during phase change is called latent heat. It is used to increase the potential energy of the molecules so that they can break loose from their bonds and change the phase. Right? Fusion and evaporation. When a body melts or evaporates, it absorbs heat. When this happens, no change takes place in the temperature. Here see, solid turn into liquid requires heat. Liquid turn into vapor requires heat. But the other way, vapor turns into liquid, liberate heat. Liquid turn into solid, liberate heat. Right? Now, fusion and evaporation. According to kinetic theory, the heat supplied to the melting body destroys the structure of the solid and overcomes the attraction among the molecules, thereby making the molecules move at random. When evaporation is considered, the molecules are moving at random with high speeds, and when they reach the surface of the liquid, they overcome the attraction of the molecules of the surface of the liquid inside liquid and escape into the atmosphere. Right? Specific latent heat of fusion, we denote it as L. Specific latent heat of fusion of ice is the quantity of heat required to change unit mass of solid ice into water at its melting point without change of temperature. It is denoted by L, units J kg minus 1. The quantity of heat Q required to convert m kilogram of solid into liquid at its melting point is given by Q equals ml. Now this is the phase change. The required heat in the phase change is ml, mass and the latent heat. Now when you are using that energy conservation equation, heat given by a first body is equal to the heat absorbed by the other body. Now when there is a phase change, you have to put this also, mc theta plus ml equals something. If vapor is concerned, steam is concerned, you have to use this ml also. In the earlier examples, I said we'll do this example later. Can you remember? That is with phase change. So go there and do that example using mc theta plus ml. Now see, here are some examples. You can do this also here. All phase change examples. Go through these examples. And this is the practical to determine the specific latent heat of fusion of ice by the method of mixtures. Again, method of mixtures. So the cooling correction is needed, right? Here you need this apparatus, and you need a calorimeter and a close with a lid, a thermometer stirrer and pieces of ice and blotting papers, right? So you keep the calorimeter and fill it 2/3 with water, and you take few pieces of ice, little pieces of ice, wipe it, and one by one you have to put it into the calorimeter and while stirring, right? And you have to be careful until the first piece dissolve. You do not put the second one. So like that you put some pieces of ice into the calorimeter, continuously stirring, and do this until the temperature of the contents will go below the room temperature 5 degrees, right? Then here you have to use a net stirrer because ice will float on the surface, so that you have to keep it down to distribute the heat everywhere equally, so that you have to use a net stirrer, right? Then take the measure the mass of the ice and mass of the empty calorimeter at the stirrer and mass of the full all contents with the ice, water, stirrer and the calorimeter. Do this using a triple beam balance. Here also you use the theory, the heat obtained by the calorimeter plus water, the heat obtained by the ice cubes equals heat given by the calorimeter plus water. Here you are considering ice, so there is a phase change. Then you have to use ml, right? The theory ml plus mc theta for ice and calorimeter plus water. Okay, so use that theory and you can find the L, latent heat of ice, from this experiment. Go through the note also. You have to do the cooling correction too. Specific latent heat of vaporization of water, right? Specific latent heat of vaporization of a substance is the amount of heat required to change the unit mass of the substance from the liquid to a vapor state at constant temperature. That is boiling point. Okay, this is the practical we are doing to find the specific latent heat of vaporization. Here again you have to have this apparatus and you have to have a concerned heater. Now you are generating steam and you are putting that steam into a calorimeter containing water, right? The theory is the heat given by steam is equal to the heat obtained by the calorimeter plus water. Now here you have a tube like this to maintain the pressure from the inside surrounding and the outside. There is a thermometer and also this is connected to a steam trap, because we are not directly putting this steam into the calorimeter, into the water, because that will condense and the water will increase here. So we need to put only the steam. Therefore, we use a steam trap and this curve shaped tube, and this tube will touch the surface of the water and the steam will come to the surface of the water. Here you have a thermometer and there is an obstacle here to not to disturb this calorimeter temperature with the Bunsen burner, and here also you have to do the cooling correction to minimize the heat losses, right? And here this steam also you have to take ml plus mc theta. Ml plus mc theta, the heat given by the steam, equals heat take from the water plus calorimeter. Here you have to measure the steam temperature, initial temperature of water and calorimeter, final temperature of water and calorimeter, and then you know the specific heat capacity of water and the calorimeter. You know the specific heat capacity of water, and here L. We can find this L, the latent heat of vaporization of water, right? Go through this carefully, the same procedure and same cooling corrections, right? Effect of pressure on boiling and melting points. When the saturation vapor pressure is equal to the external atmospheric pressure, the boiling starts and continues. It means that the boiling point is the temperature at which the saturation vapor pressure is equal to the external atmospheric pressure. Therefore, at the top of a mountain, the atmospheric pressure being low, the boiling point of a liquid is also low, right? Vapor and humidity. Our last unit. Now see evaporation. Evaporation is the escape of molecules from the surface of a liquid. It leads to cooling because the faster molecules escape, and therefore the average kinetic energy of the molecules of the liquid decreases. As soon as the temperature of the liquid falls below that of the surroundings, they give heat to the liquid. Thus, a steady state is reached in liquid mass continues to decrease. Now, we'll see the differences between evaporation and vaporization. Evaporation takes place at all temperatures. Evaporation takes place at the surface of the liquid only. The temperature can change while evaporating. But in vaporization, boiling takes place. Vaporization or boiling same take place at the boiling point only. Boiling takes place at all the parts of the liquid, not only from the surface. When boiling, the temperature does not change. Right? Here see the saturated vapor pressure. Now imagine this is like a barometer. You have mercury, and if you insert ether by means of an injection tube, then it will go up because the density is lower than the mercury. So that they go up and evaporates, and there will be vapor, ether vapor. Now you are continuing this, then you can see a very slight layer of ether will deposit here. That means no more evaporation take place. That means this vacuum is already saturated with ether vapor, right? That is called saturated vapor, right? Now here also when it is open, evaporation takes place. When it closed, the evaporation takes place, go there, right? When this is saturated, it will coming down again and will come to an equilibrium position. When the space above a liquid is closed, it soon becomes saturated with vapor and a dynamic equilibrium is established. The pressure exerted by the vapor is called saturated vapor pressure. Saturated vapor pressure, whose value depends only on the temperature. If the volume of the space is reduced, some vapor liquefies, but the pressure is unchanged. The saturated vapor does not obey gas laws, but vapor obeys gas laws, right? Saturated vapor does not obey gas laws, right? See, variation of latent heat with pressure and temperature. The latent heat of vaporization of a substance varies with temperature and hence pressure, because the boiling point depends on pressure. Example, water at 1 atm boils at 100 and has latent heat of 2259 joules per gram, but 0.5 atm boils at 82 degrees Celsius and has latent heat of 2310 joules per gram, right? See this curve also. And boiling and saturated vapor pressure. As the temperature of a liquid is increased, the rate of evaporation also increases. A stage is reached when bubbles of vapor start from in the body of the liquid which rise to the surface and escape. A liquid boils at the temperature at saturated vapor pressure is equal to the external pressure. Right? Thus, boiling point of a liquid is controlled by the external pressure. Here you can see the triple point here. Now this is the sublimation curve, the fusion curve and the vaporization curve. Right? Dew point. It is the temperature at which the mass of water vapor present in given volume of air is just sufficient to saturate it. This is the temperature at which actual vapor pressure becomes equal to the saturated vapor pressure. What is absolute humidity? Absolute humidity you can define in several ways. One way is absolute humidity is the moisture of water vapor per unit volume in the air regardless of temperature. It is expressed as grams of moisture per cubic meter of air. Right? Relative humidity. Right? Relative humidity is the ratio of the saturated vapor pressure of water vapor at dew point to the saturated vapor pressure of water at a given temperature. This is the equation. You have to multiply it by 100 because we give it as a percentage. Relative humidity depends on the temperature and the pressure of the system of interest. The same amount of water vapor in a higher relative humidity in cool air than warm air. You can define the relative humidity this way also. The ratio of mass of water vapor, simple M, actually present in a given volume of air to the mass of water vapor, capital M, required to saturate the same volume at the same temperature is called the relative humidity. It is generally expressed as a percentage when into 100. Now, this is also practical to find the relative humidity of a relative humidity using a polished calorimeter. Right? Need these apparatus. Take this is the equation, right? We are using this equation. There are lots of definitions. We are using this definition. Here we are using two polished calorimeters, identical calorimeters, and one with the stirrer and a thermometer, other one only with the thermometer. And now we cover it by a glass here, and you are putting some ice cubes into this calorimeter where it contains water, and you will notice that at one instance the polished surface will blur, right? From this you can see it very clearly. This will remain very bright and this will become blur, right? So at that instance you have to measure the temperature and stop putting ice cubes, and then again you keep on stirring until the polished surface appears again, right? When you see that the polished surface appearing again, take the reading again, and you add this 2 and divide it by 2, right? That will be the dew point. Okay. From that, here theta 1, theta 2 divided by 2. From that, using a relative humidity chart, you can find the relative humidity of the atmosphere. Thank you, dear students. We'll do the last session next week.